Hello and welcome to Everything's Fine, probably your weekly antidote to bad news. I'm here with Shelley today. How are you, Shelley?
I'm very good, thank you, considering it's a Monday. And we don't normally do this on a Monday.
No, it's all odd, isn't it? It's Monday, there's no stew, it's everything's different.
I'm in
a different place to normal. It's just,
I'm in a really unusually mellow mood for a Monday.
Yeah. Maybe it was knowing we were going to be doing this. You
I
knew
think
you were going to be
so.
seeing me, and it just mellowed you down immediately.
Yeah.
All be fine. I get a bit of gym time. It's all good.
Yeah. I was just looking forward to seeing you.
There we are. I thought that was. And we've got a fabulous episode this week. We've got a guest. Love it when we have a guest.
We do behave better when we have a guest.
That's all. We do tend to do that. Yeah. So we're joined today by a man who knows lots about thinking and positive thinking, Rob Smith. Rob, thank you for coming along today. Welcome.
It's my pleasure.
How are you? Keeping well?
Very well, thank you. Yes. I can't tell you where my time goes to. I have to think about that for at least half an hour to tell you where my time goes to. But no, I'm keeping very well, thank you. I'm still keeping my hand in doing bits and pieces of work. Somebody described it the other day as hobby projects. And I'm quite happy with that description, so long as the hobby is a paid hobby.
Well, that's the real trick, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are you still hobby projecting in the same field around solution?
Yeah. So the two big things that I'm interested in really is people and change. So latterly, in running Thinking Focus with three partners, we were a behavioral change consultancy. So that was right up my street. You know, one of the things that we were very conscious about is that if you're going to bring improvements in a place of work, then it's about helping people to be better versions of themselves. A lot of that is behavioral. It's the connection between lining up your emotions with rational progress and solution-focused thinking, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And so, you know, people and progress and behavior are the things that I just get involved in and I'm still doing. So I do some coaching from time to time, and my coaching falls into sort of two buckets, really. In the way of paying forward or giving back, I'm not quite sure how to describe it. I offer one free coaching session a week to whoever wants it. So that's 52 over the year. And then I also have paid coaching where previous clients sort of go, I want to keep that contact. And some of those are quite short-term projects or have a short-term project length. Others are quite regular. So, you know, we have a chat once a month or whatever about whatever they want to be coached on. And then from a behavioral change point of view, I still do a bit of facilitation, a bit of consulting. So, for example, next week, I'm in New York for a day doing a facilitated workshop for a finance company. So I will do maybe 3 or 4 of those during the course of the year. So that's what I'm doing to keep my hand in.
Brilliant. So you mentioned solution-focused thinking. As you say, we'd really like to get into talking about that in a moment. Mm-hmm. It was certainly when we first met and I first came across the work you did, all that behavioral change stuff. That was what really got me interested, got me excited. And I think the solution-focused thinking models drove a lot of that. I mean, just for a bit of background, I went on a 4-day workshop around the stuff that Rob does. And I don't think I've ever come away from training with so many things that I was going to do and did. I didn't just talk about it, just full of ideas and inspiration.
Just genuine enthusiasm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Properly inspired, because it all comes from you. It doesn't come from anybody else. So, Rob, I could start talking about it, but you'll do it much, much better than I will. Tell us a bit about the solutions-focused thinking models and how this all equates to behavioural change.
Yeah. solution focused thinking is a bit of terminology. It can be bandied around, it can be used, abused. Nobody's got a trademark on it, but it really talks to mindset. You mentioned positive thinking a few minutes ago, and really, if I sort of, before I delve too deeply, if I sort of think of solution focused thinking, those three words, it's about recognizing that we all have challenges, problems, things that we want to solve, things that are maybe dragging us back or holding us back. And if we were to look at that from a viewpoint of, I recognize there's something that is a problem or something that's holding me back, how might I get over that? That's you looking for a solution to move forward. So that's all really that solution focused thinking is about. If we didn't employ solution focused thinking, we'd be hit by something and we wouldn't know what to do, and we'd just be stuck until somebody came along and dragged us out of that hole, or actually we'd be stuck forever. So the attitude, because I think it is an attitude around solution focused thinking, is to sort of recognize, actually, maybe there's a problem, maybe there's something that has to have a solution to it, but I'm not going to be defeated by it. I'm going to look for a solution. I'm going to actively search in my thinking for a solution to that. Now, I mentioned mindset. It's quite easy to talk about positive and negative, and people use positive and negative in connection with mindset all the time. So, and I'll just make this personal, members of my family could turn around to me and call me a grumpy so-and-so. I might get grumpy about certain things, and that, if it remains unchecked, becomes a mindset. Well, don't ever have anything to do with Rob because he's one of those negative guys. He just hoovers up positivity, and you're going to walk away more depressed after speaking to him than you were when you started speaking to him. That's at its extreme. Positive, of course, at its extreme is equally damaging, I think, because you could be deluded. You could think everything in the garden's rosy, never a problem. Is it raining outside? Yes, it is raining outside. That's not a problem because the garden needs the rain. And if we didn't have rain, we wouldn't have rainbows, all that sort of thing. And again, you could
toxic positivity.
Well, right. Yeah. What a great description, because it's great to have a positive outlook, but you do have to temper it a little bit because you could gloss over all sorts of things where you go, yeah, but where's your connection to reality? Because we do have to face up to the fact that maybe something has to be solved, or not everything in the garden's rosy.
Yeah, because I used to have a bit of a bugbear about that. Well, not used to, I probably still do, but I just remember somewhere I worked before and there was always a bit of that push all the time. And I felt like this really is quite a way of just sort of invalidating everybody's problems.
Yes.
And invalidating the way everybody feels about something. And so I know exactly what you mean. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. So what we have to do really is find the happy medium, right? We have to occupy the middle ground slightly. So if what I've described between negative and positive is a spectrum or a scale, the extremes of that scale are both slightly dangerous and have risks attached to them. In the middle of that scale is where it's quite productive thought and productive activity, because you can go, I recognize things do go wrong, but actually I'm going to apply my thinking to trying to find a solution to that and achieve something and move on and get better. Mindset is a universal term that's applied to all of that. And, we've borrowed recently very heavily from Carol Dweck's work on mindset and the understanding of, what is a growth mindset and what is a fixed mindset, because it's really useful to actually have that learning and make that application. Where I previously worked and where Jim's referring to where we met, it was almost not allowed not to think positively. there was, a little bit like the toxic positivity that you've just described.
Did they used to say to you, I'm only hearing problems and I want solutions?
Something along that ilk. Yeah. And you can go further extreme than that and going, you're allowing your negative thinking to take over your life, and silly boy, sort of thing. It's not helpful to people, especially if they do have an issue that needs to be solved. So what's more useful, and come back to the use of Jim's word, possibly, or possibility, and positive, is if you can have various techniques at your disposal to turn a problem into a solution or start looking for a solution on the back of a problem, then actually that's very empowering. It is a mindset shift, because you're sort of not taking a problem at face value and going, okay, well, that's it then. That's the end of the story, because nothing can be done about that. And you're just going, well, what if? You're asking yourself a series of questions that enable your subconscious brain to look at the problem in a different way and to try to find a way of overcoming something. And that, for me, is the essence of solution-focused thinking, because you're going, is there a possible solution? I don't know, but let me think about it. What could I possibly do instead of either doing nothing or accepting, if you like, the status quo or the problem as it is? So
you mentioned earlier that question, what might I possibly do?
Yeah.
One of the things that stuck with me from very early on in this is trying to open up the possibilities of just thinking, well, what might I possibly do?
Yeah. There's lots of, we're now delving into NLP as well, because the basis of NLP is enabling your language to help you rather than to hold you back. And this is where I think the most comfortable thing that I've come to, I guess, in the last maybe 4 years or 5, has been around healthy mindset, thinking about the fact that your thinking can affect your emotions as well as your attitude, as well as your behavior, as well as looking for achievements, or finding solutions. So language is key in that, because the great thing about what might you do, it means that there isn't a black and white answer. It's not a yes or a no. It's a maybe, it's a might, it's a could. And the word possibly is just putting icing on the cake, because we're not looking for a definite answer to this question. We're looking for possible answers to this question. So you're letting yourself off the hook in terms of not putting pressure either on yourself or somebody else you might be asking a question of. But not only are you're not putting the pressure on, you're expanding the thought process to go, instead of thinking about one possible solution, we could be thinking about multiple possible solutions. And then we could choose the one we want, or choose the one that seems to make more sense, or put whatever condition you'd like on that. Choose the cheapest, choose the fastest, do you know what I mean? It gives you more choice, because you've used very useful mindset enabling or solution focused enabling language to address the problem or the thing that you're looking to achieve.
And actually, one thing that I found useful came out of that is it's choosing that combination of things that you've thought.
Yeah.
You start to think, what might I do? And you've come up with options, and suddenly you go, actually, I could do a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that. And
yeah, no, very good. So the multiple options piece, at one level, you could describe that as trying to trick your brain by using more positive language or more solution focused language, because our subconscious brain receives its instruction and then works as a computer, really. So you have to consciously give yourself a trigger, and the best way to enable your thinking is a conscious trigger using language like you've just suggested. What might I do? What could I do? What could I possibly do? Because your subconscious just goes to answer that question. If you said, what am I going to do? Your subconscious will come up with an answer to that question, but it'll be a very definite answer. And the answer could be right, it could be wrong, and the answer could actually give you limited options. So we're making use of science a little bit in looking at this from a solution-focused point of view, from a mindset point of view, to understand that our brains work in that way. Our subconscious brain is far more powerful than our conscious brain. So we're tapping into the power of that thought. And there ends the biology lesson, because I don't want to get too deep into it. But
is it, I mean, there's a danger, surely, that our subconscious, if we just ask it the question, what am I going to do? The answer comes back of, I don't know.
Correct. It's the same effect as a closed question. Yeah, you're either going to get a fact or a figure, or a yes or a no. And if you're trying to move yourself forward, the solution focus bit, and you ask yourself the wrong question, guess what? It's going to find you're not going to get to a solution, or it's going to take you a lot longer to get to a solution, or you're going to have to rely on somebody else to come up with a solution. So it's a really helpful, and I'll use the word mindset again, really helpful mindset to have, to go, if I was to ask myself a better question, more positive language, more enabling use of language, I'm going to get to a solution quicker, and I'm probably going to have, and use your terminology, Jim, more options to choose from. So why wouldn't I? That's a really positive thing to do. That means that I can probably solve, given the right question and given a bit of time, I could probably solve just about anything that came my way. And of course, then you can accelerate that power, extend that power of thinking if you get other people involved in it as well. So consider the three of us, had a joint or shared problem, and we asked a series of slightly different questions with slightly different nuance, but they're all solution focused. Or we all concentrated on the same question, but because we're thinking about how could I possibly do X, Y, and Z, we'd come up with a range of answers where, because they're shared choices, we can compare notes and probably move forward even quicker. So there is the power there that can be shared in a group.
Yeah, I always quite like sort of reaching out to other people if I
Right.
can. It's not that kind of malicious incompetency kind of way, like, oh, I just can't. No, but it is just in the sense that I don't know, I just find it's more helpful to just get other people's opinions on things, really, isn't it? Because sometimes a problem that can seem really complicated to you is actually something that someone else has dealt with before.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and I think sometimes we're always a little bit worried about being seen as underachieving or not performing very well, but it doesn't actually asking other people's opinion doesn't indicate that at all. So
no, and again, that was one of the sort of the tools that we've been employing for a long time, and we Thinking Focus. When we're working with groups and facilitating groups, the power of a shared view accelerates our thinking and makes us feel more happy, because you're releasing that sort of feel good factor of endorphins, because you're having other people who are sense checking and testing and collaborating and contributing towards your thinking as well. So all of that is really useful, definitely. And one of the things that we would almost turn into a critique of that is, if you haven't gone and asked for help, then you've fallen short of a critical resource. And it flies in the face. It's quite interesting. If I think about all the different people that I've had the privilege of working with and facilitating in groups, from leadership levels down to the shop floor, if you like, people tend to think that asking for help is a weakness. And I'm generalizing there, but they tend to view that. And especially in companies, you speak to, and the higher you go up the chain of command, you speak to a more senior leader, and asking for help, no, I'm not paid for that. I'm paid for my skill, I'm paid for my brain, I'm paid for my thinking. And it's not, and you described it really nicely there, Shelley, because it's like, you're not going to ask somebody for help because you're incompetent or you can't think for yourself or you lack the confidence. You're going to get that wider view to sense check things. And actually, it's an acknowledgement from an emotionally intelligent leader that somebody else has probably got better answers than you have. You're not employed here to come up with all the answers. You're employed here to steer the ship, and to tap into the potential of everybody.
yeah, and people who are junior to you as well, actually, it's always worth, I find, involving them as well, because it gives them their chance to sort of show what actually they can do to help
Sure.
and boost their confidence and helps with their development as well. I mean, there's definitely on my team people who are junior to me who are definitely far better at a lot of things than I am. And I would never be frightened to admit that. I don't think that makes me like bad as a leader. I think that's sort of a better thing to sort of say,
Yeah.
oh no. And some of them I've even said, oh, I could see you being my manager one day in an appraisal or something. Not lots of them, but every now and then it does come up, because actually some people have really they've got so much potential, haven't they?
Definitely. And the danger is that if you don't ask people, what alternative is left to you? The only alternative left to you is to tell people. And if you're telling people what to do all the time, then over time, the risk to that is they don't think for themselves. But also, it's making a huge assumption that what you're telling them is the only way of doing things. Because I am only the sum total of my combined experience and knowledge and learning to date. So all I'm doing is I'm just going, but I'm just telling you what I know so far. Yeah, but what about all the other things that haven't been discovered so far? Unless we ask those questions and involve those other people, we might just always run the way that you want us to run, Rob, and there could be other ways of doing this that we haven't yet explored. And if you keep on telling me, we're never going to explore that. So that's definitely the antithesis of solution-focused thinking.
Yeah.
I find it all fascinating. So
absolutely.
It fits right into the behavioral piece, because your thinking then does impact your behavior. If you want a different result, you have to think differently and do differently. So
I think coming back to something you were talking about earlier, about thoughts impacting emotions, which then impact behavior or actions. What's very interesting is, certainly from the outside looking in at someone, we don't see the thoughts. We see the behavior.
Yeah.
And that can sometimes lead us down completely the wrong route when we think about what's wrong with that, what's happening with that person. But equally, I think we don't, certainly I know in the past for myself, I haven't really been aware necessarily of what my thought process is, but I'm aware of how I'm feeling. And I have to trace it back to what thought it is that's causing that, so that I can try and reframe it and get myself into a better state.
Sure, absolutely. And I personally think that the only way out of an emotional crisis, and I don't, use that word, I'm using it lightly. If our emotions are stuck, or our emotions are in a place where we're not feeling the best, or, we're a bit down in the doldrums, whatever, I personally think the only way that you can break that cycle is a different thought process in your head. You have to be aware of it, like you've just described. And then you're asking something, and this might sound a little bit twee, but you're asking something of yourself about, so how could I possibly feel better about myself? You're throwing that possibility language in there, and that might serve to cause you to find out what the source is, what the problem was in the first place that's making you feel bad, but it might just enable you to snap out. We've used over time, and you'll probably remember this, Jim, to occupy that middle ground of the spectrum that I was describing before. And Holly, Shelley, you've actually mentioned this too. Is your thinking helping you, or is your thinking hindering you or holding you back? And we like to use that language as middle ground language rather than positive and negative, so that we're not at the extremes. And we're basically going, the thought that you're currently having, or the thought that you are imagining about the future, or the thing that you're remembering from the past, is it helpful or is it unhelpful? Recognize what effect it's having on your forward momentum. Because actually, if you want to then find a solution, or you want to do something differently, what more helpful thought could you have? And that's typically a question. You have to ask a question to unblock and to move forward. And everybody's comfortable with that. I'm generalizing there, but in 37 years plus of doing things like this with people, there's nobody that I've come across who doesn't like the terminology helpful and unhelpful, or hindering, because you can reference it straight away. Oh, what I've just thought about is helpful. Oh, what I've just thought about is unhelpful. A more helpful thing to say would be this. Right, cool. So let's do that then. So, and it's non-invasive, it's not threatening, it doesn't require a psychology degree. You can just go helpful, unhelpful. It's a shortcut, and then you can address it. And of course, if somebody wants to say, and you could ask me that question, Rob, you're looking really grumpy today and you sound grumpy. You're having helpful or unhelpful thoughts? I'm having unhelpful thoughts. Okay. What more helpful thoughts? I don't want to at the moment. I want to stay grumpy. Stay grumpy then. But recognize that if you don't want to be grumpy anymore, if that's a choice you want to make, ask yourself something different to break out of that cycle.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to stay grumpy while you have a meeting with a particular person, and then you can go back to being nice again. I might be missing the overall point of how it's best to work there, but I just think, yeah, save it for someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about moving forward. Go back to your original question, Jim, about solution-focused thinking. As a term, as three words connected together, it's really just a sort of a badge, a heading to go, would you like to help yourself? Would you like to alter your thinking? Because you can help yourself by altering your thinking to get to a different place. And that might be temporarily in a different place. It might be permanently in a different place. It might be a complete change or shift in your mindset to form new habits and to let go of things that you want to let go of. So it can be from very small beginnings, very humble beginnings. It can be extraordinarily powerful and long lasting.
And I mean, Rob, I think there's a great sort of practical example here of you making use of real sort of positive thinking. So the place where you and I first met, that ended in you and some of the other members of the team being made redundant.
Yes.
But you pretty quickly turned that around into something really quite good, didn't you?
Yeah, we turned it around very quickly, not because we're clever, but because we had a massive motivation to do so. And I think in understanding a motivation, if I can just throw that in for 5 minutes, is a useful thing to acknowledge here as well. Because, and again, without being scientific about it, we're motivated typically to escape from pain or to move towards something that is more exciting, more accessible, some sort of gain. And the pain gain thing is critical in understanding how people are motivated to do things. If we're faced with redundancy, that's a painful thing. So you're going to actually immediately be motivated to go, well, I don't really want to stay there. It's not what I want to do. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do in the future, but I'm motivated not to be on the receiving end of this pain anymore. So it's giving you enough impetus, if you like, enough of the internal chemicals to cause you to do something different and to think differently. And the situation that we were in fact, is that the business that we were in was unfortunately beginning to unravel. And so we thought, okay, well, we're in the threat here of this business not succeeding or not having longevity. What are we going to do about that? So we actually did two things. One was 5 of us, 5 interested parties, tried to go for a management buyout, tried to take over that business because we thought that we had a different way of running it. And it was very obvious very quickly, for all sorts of reasons that I don't need to go into, that that wasn't going to work. Bring in the redundancy reality. It's like, okay, well, we're going to be made redundant, and actually, I don't know if the business is going to close or not close. And quite funny, and here's the helpful and unhelpful thing and how quickly it can work. Immediately on the back of, oh, well, I might be made redundant here, speaking personally, was which was an unhelpful thought. The very helpful thought was, that's great. I've been here for 12 years. I'm going to get a payout. Like, there is the silver lining, and whilst I'm quite enjoying doing what I'm doing and quite enjoy being here, and it's all going to come to an end. Oh, okay, well, at least I get a payout because I've been here for 12 years. Which, when you then examine that for more than a few minutes, which is what I did, or what we did collectively, actually the business was in enough trouble for the business to go down the route of insolvency. And the business was made insolvent, which basically nullifies any redundancy payment. So I knew then I'm not going to be A, redundant, or B, have a redundancy payment. We're basically just left out in the cold with nothing. So then the away from gain motivation kicks in straight away. But the reality of our situation was, because we had been exploring, the 5 of us, a management buyout, we already knew the ins and outs of the business. We already had a feeling for how we would run that business. So because the business wasn't going to survive, we thought, well, why don't we just make our own business? And why don't we create a business to do the things that we really enjoy doing? Which was why it was so quick, Jim. So we literally went from a position of understanding what the implications of an insolvent world looks like to starting a business within 3 weeks. The strength to that, I think, for us was we had a common denominator in the fact that we're all in the same situation. We had a fairly common motivation because we had this pain that we were trying to avoid, and the excitement and gain of maybe something new and building something new and an achievement. And without going into too much detail, we had a common enemy because it was like, well, do you know what? We feel like we've been shafted here, so we're going to go and do something about this. So and that's a big motivating factor as well. So we got organized quite quickly. We had some crossover client work where we were in the throes of, because all 5 of us were all involved in very similar role. we had our own sort of client contacts. And cut a very long story short, we had 3 clients that we were just about to be doing some work with. And I have to say, I'm hoping that we acted with integrity. We went to those clients and said, this is just about to happen. We're in the middle of actually putting something together. Do you want the old or do you want the new? Because we're going to create some new. And 2 of the 3 clients went, we'll have the new, please, because our relationship is with you. One of the clients said, oh, I better stick with the old. Great. But we gave them that choice. So we basically started in 3 weeks, and we started with 2 clients. And we just got a shift on and spent time designing what our approach would be, time designing some resources specifically for those 2 clients because we needed to go live with them immediately. And we didn't have a letterhead. we had to create a name. We had to put together a branded house style, if you like, for our presentations, etc. So we did all of that very rapidly. And the biggest thing to solve, come back to solution focused thinking, was how we're going to finance it all. So we decided that we'd all put money in, and 3 out of the 4 of us didn't have the money to put in, so me being one of them. So we went and got a loan each, and we just opened that business in 3 weeks with a working capital of 100 grand, and that was it. And 9 years later, the business is still thriving. I chose to leave the business last October because my own personal situation is that actually I can afford to take early retirement, so I'm taking early retirement and go and do these hobby projects. So that in a sort of a nutshell is the story. The original five became 4 because when it came to the crunch of we've got to do this, these are our clients, and we all need to put money in, the 5th guy went, I don't think I can do all of that, so I'm not going to come along for the ride, thanks. And Thinking Focus was born in June 2016, with 4 of us all being co-owners and co-founders.
What would you say? Because I suppose, like, listening to your story, it sounds like you were a very resourceful person, and you were with other resourceful people as well.
Yeah.
So I guess, what would you advise to people who perhaps they haven't learned to have those resources, but they're really struggling in certain situations? Like, where's the best place to start, really?
Well, I'll borrow your description from earlier. It's seriously involving other people.
Yeah.
You need to get help. I would not have started Thinking Focus by myself at all. And I'm pretty sure that none of us as individuals would have done it by ourselves. So there was the strength of the 4. You help each other along. You all have an input. You all have slightly different ideas. We had a common purpose, I think, and we melded that common purpose and a common motivation. But involving other people is this, I think, the strongest thing for building resources and tapping into resources and making some progress. I think you have to have a little bit of inner resilience to help you with your thinking and help you with your attitude and help you with your behavior. But again, your resilience, attitude, behavior can all be helped by colleagues, by friends. If we think about we collectively as the human race, how we exist day to day, we tend to involve the same 3 groups of people every day: friends, family, and work or social contacts. And we always dip into that same pot precisely because they know us, precisely because we've got some love or emotional connection, precisely because they're the easiest. Where you want to exert more resourcefulness is when you get a bit braver and you go, well, I'm going to go and contact people who I've not got an existing relationship with, who have got some expertise. Who do I know who can do podcasting? Oh, well, go down this group. Who do I know who might be able to actually loan me some money for a short term? You go down this group. So it's thinking about possibilities again, but it's thinking about that in terms of the resource being the people resource. Who do I know and who knows somebody that could introduce me to somebody else? It's sort of like the 6 degrees of separation type of approach, but for real, where you're sort of going, I might not know everything and might not have networks that extend all the way to, I don't know, some expert in my field, but I'm sure I know somebody who can introduce me to somebody who can introduce me to somebody again. And it's doing that thinking. And I honestly think it comes back to the thinking, because you could go unhelpful, redundancy, insolvency, I'm stuck, I'm just going to lick my wounds and sit in a dark room for a year longer.
Yeah,
Or
send
you
an
could go,
angry email that you're going to regret later.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Or you could do something about it. And you could argue rationally that the cold light of day also impacts you, because you immediately go, well, I need money to survive, so I need a job. I need to go and earn. How am I going to do that? But we all make choices. My postman used to be a social worker for 10 years, and he's a postman because his highest priority is health. And his second priority is interest in people. He was a social worker because of the interest in people, but he's got completely stressed out because he feels like he's carrying the weight of all of his social working clients on his shoulders. He doesn't want to carry that weight anymore. He wants fresh air. He wants exercise. He wants to do something meaningful to his community. And, oh, by the way, he wants to get paid for it as well. So he's become a postman. So, it's recognizing the personal choices that we make. I've had the privilege of working with probably about between 1,500 and 2,000 people a year for the last X number of years. And there's a good proportion of that population who believe that they are victims, who believe that they're in a situation not of their own making, but it's a situation that they also can't escape. And you sort of go, okay, mindset shift needed. Because if you're going to carry on doing that, you're just going to get quite cross, quite grumpy, quite depressed, quite stressed, whatever words we want to use. This is where I think the power of mindset, helpful thinking, solution-focused thinking, whatever label you want to put to it, is really quite useful.
You talk about other people. I mean, the last time that I was in a fixed role that came to an end, Rob, you're one of the first people actually that I contacted. I found out about that, and although we ultimately never ended up doing any work together, some of the stuff that you put me on to, including Carol Dweck's mindset stuff, was really useful.
Yes,
during that time, in terms of working out what I was going to do and building into a good few years of successful freelancing. Another thing that I've found really useful from some of the stuff that started with you was the strength of the reason why.
Okay.
And the strength of reason why having to be stronger than the why not, because there'll always be reasons why we don't do stuff. We're always talking about doing things, and then we never get around to doing it.
Right.
But if the reason why is stronger than all of those reasons that might get in the way, why not, then we tend to move towards that.
No, absolutely. So you mentioned, and again, it's a bit of terminology. It's something that I know that we used a lot, reason why. And, to reiterate what you just said, you're sort of measuring the strength of it. How strong is your reason to do something, as opposed to how strong is your reason for not doing something? We tended to use that as a measure because we're trying to simplify. We over the years, we built a whole pile of tools, and we call them thinking tools because they're all designed to help you with more helpful thinking, right? One of the simplest tools when you're coming to measure something is just using common language. So 1 to 10 scales. And we always used to put, you remember, a reason why on a scale of 1 to 10. So I could speak to a 5-year-old child who comes and knocks on the door. The ice cream van's just turned up. And you sort of go, oh, I want, £1.50, £2, whatever it is. I want an ice cream. How strong is your reason why? Well, what a silly question, because their reason why is going to be a 10, because the ice cream van's there. They just want the money. They want the ice cream. So it's dead simple. Part of that is circumstantial. Part of that is because, that's the level of importance that something is naturally being attached to that thing that they want at the time. But what's really interesting, and it's a very twee example, I know, is that if you stop for just 1 second and think about all the things that you want to do, or all the things that you've got on your to-do list or your aspiration list, and go, all of those things are important to me. If you sat down and I said to you, apply a 1 to 10 scale on every single one of those things on the list, you'd be able to put a number against each of them very quickly, right? Because it's just an internal measure. But the other part of that is a very quick realization to go, not everything holds the same level of importance. But unless you put the number to it, you almost convince yourself that everything has equal importance. go back to the kid again, and the ice cream van's turned up and he's come to, ask for money at the door. How strong is your reason why? Well, when you then go and see the different types of ice cream that can be bought for the £2, then there's a quandary, right? Because oh, well, I like that one, I like this one. So choices come into it. And that's the same with looking at 1 to 10 scale and reason why. How strong is your reason for wanting to do something? How strong is your reason for wanting this rather than that? If you're going to involve people in doing things, how strong is your reason for involving them? And what's that measured on? Is that because of their expertise? Is it because you like them? Is it because they're friendly? Is it because they're funny? Is it because they're good at thinking? So you have to be aware of what the criteria is, but then you can apply the number to it very, very easily. And the position with all of this is really you're talking to somebody's inner motivation, you're talking to their purpose, you're talking to their values. You might have a strong reason to do something because it's the critical thing that you have to achieve right now. There's a time constraint to it. Or you might have a really strong reason to do something because it's something that you find really entertaining or really fun, and it's going to give you gratification. It doesn't much matter what your reasons are. All you're seeking to do by putting a little measure against it is comparing it with the other things on your list. And what we've tended to do over time, and we've modified the reason why a little bit. We still use the 1 to 10 scale, but we tend to help people to recognize that if something isn't important enough, you really shouldn't be spending any time or energy with it. And I came across a little story, and I hope it's true. It's probably just a little urban legend concerning Warren Buffett. And here's a conversation that he had with his chauffeur one day about getting things done. And he has a little rule, or the story goes that there's a little rule where he goes, okay, enable you to stop procrastinating, to enable you to achieve more, enable you to get things done. And it's all about reason why. I want you to make a list of the top 20 things that you feel you've got to achieve, the top 20 things that are important to you. And so the next day, have you done your list? And the chauffeur goes, oh, yeah, I've done my list, right? I've got my top 20 here. And apparently Warren then goes, okay, well, so pay close attention to the 5 and get rid of the other 15. So the top 5, 1 to 5, great, they stay on your list. The other 15 in the bin. Don't even look at them. But this is my list of my top 20 most important things. No, having 20 things that are important is too many. Have 5, because then you are increasing your ability to achieve some of those 5. And the acknowledgement here, and there's lots of scientific discovery behind all of this, not because of the story, is that actually those other 15 become distractors. And if you're dividing yourself too thinly, you're probably only going to partly achieve some of them. How important are they to you, really?
That is interesting, because it actually just made me think about how if it was the next day, he probably would have said, have you done your list? And then I would have went, no, sorry, I didn't get time to do my list.
Didn't get around to it.
And then trying to write my list of 20 important things would end up on my list of 20 important things.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how that does make sense.
And this has been around for ages. I mean, if you think about a tool that nearly all of us know or certainly heard of, when you're trying to achieve something, you can use SMART goals as an achievement methodology. And the language around SMART has altered slightly over the years. When it first came out, it was specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. And the realistic bit was about your reason why. It was about how real is this in the world compared to other things that you do. I think that that's stronger if you talk about the realistic word being relevant rather than realistic. And of course, SMART came out of GE, I think, in about 1962 or 63, because people before that had massive, audacious goals. And so it's like, oh, yeah, but we're getting caught up with being too far future focused. We've got to be more specific. Nothing wrong with SMART goals at all. But as soon as you change the word realistic to relevant, it's far easier to measure it, I think, because you're then going, how relevant is this thing you want to do compared to that thing over there and this thing over here? And your relevance can change day by day. It can change week by week. But actually, at that moment in time, if you're specifically trying to get clarity around that goal or the thing you want to achieve, applying a 1 to 10 scale to the relevance word is really powerful. And it just helps people. So it comes back to my description of helpful thinking. And because that's really any tool that any of us sort of garnered over the years, you sort of have to go, how useful is that tool? What can I use it for? How might I modify it? I'm going to choose to use this tool instead of that tool. It's great because we're all making our choices about those things. But did that answer your question about reason why, Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. It's a great one. You know, I have a colleague who talks quite often when we're getting pulled in lots of different directions to try to bring back to what is the priority. By definition, there can only be one priority.
Yeah,
what's the most important thing? Let's focus on that.
Yeah. Mine's always not getting in trouble.
Yeah. What a very NHS attitude that is, Shelley.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So, Rob, I know Thinking Focus still out there, still doing great stuff. A great place to go organisationally if you want to find out more about this and bring some of this thinking in. If you're an individual and you want to learn more about some of this stuff, what are some of the sources you'd suggest? What's good places to go to start finding out more about this?
Oh, gosh. As a cop-out, we have at our disposal now AI.
Of course.
So probably the fastest route of getting onto Google or your search engine of choice and trying to find out information is to be led by a great question in AI, which is something about, if I was to find some helpful thinking techniques, where would I start? And, you know, all sorts of things would probably emerge. I mean, I have some favorites. You would have some favorites over time. And, you know, the people great and good and even mediocre have written books. You know, go back to what Shelley was saying again before, keep on referencing you. Involve others. You know, one easy way of being able to not be in the world by yourself and puzzle over things by yourself is to borrow expertise from other people and to delve into their brains and their attitude. So I've always dipped into books. I don't tend to do too much research. If I come across something specific that I want an answer to, then, you know, I will do 3 or 4 Google searches with the same question to different sources and then just compare notes. But we've talked about Carol Dweck. Carol Dweck's approach to examining mindset and trying to understand mindset and then making it, the understanding of it, readily available to the wider population, I think is really useful. So I think her work is great. Angela Duckworth has some great material out there around sort of resilience and grit. So that's good. I quite like Charles Duhigg as an author. I think the godfather of motivation in helping to understand motivation is a guy called Daniel Pink. So he's written a book called Drive, and I think his description of autonomy, mastery, and purpose to help to understand the sort of the inner workings of motivation is really quite useful. So, you know, I think as an individual, you can get ready access to quite a lot of really good material. I think as an individual, the starting point, however, has to be self-awareness, and it has to be a wish to want to learn something slightly different, which is going to help you. You know, I don't believe you can motivate somebody unless they want to be motivated. And if they want to be motivated, they'll probably motivate themselves anyway. So they can find motivation in what other people do and say. But I don't think necessarily if I was in corporate land, if I was a manager attempting to motivate a member of my staff, I've got to create the environment and the ability for them to find that information and guide them to do it rather than tell them to be motivated, because I don't think that ever works. Again, reference it. You know, who do you know who really inspires you from a motivation point of view, from a problem solving point of view, from a financial savvy point of view, whatever. It's actually asking yourself the question about what is it I want to learn and who from. And the who from piece is really quite liberating, because it causes you to then think about, so who are experts in the field that I'm prepared to listen to. So I think this refers back to your reason why reference again, Jim, because one of the things that we tended to use whenever we were coaching people, and I still use it to this day, is when you're talking about who you might want to involve, the question before that is, what are the reasons that you want to try to involve people? And once you've got the reasons, you then go, okay, and who fits on the list? Because when you ask reasons before the list of who, you come out with a bigger list of who. Yeah. My reasons to involve people are because they're fun, because they're clever, because they're fast, because they're this, creative, da 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 da. So now I've got a whole category. And then you backfill the categories with, who do I know in that category? Who do I know in that category? Who else could I know? How could I find out? So the list is much bigger. And again, it comes back to the language, because if you said, maybe, Shelley, you've got a problem, and I go, right, so who can help you with that problem? Wrong question, because your answer typically will be, I don't know. Who can help you?
Yeah.
Who could possibly help you? Well, immediately you're starting to think of one or two names. It might not be a long list, but you're helping the other person with their thinking just because of the language you use.
Yeah, like what people do you know have the resources that you need, I guess, is
and a stronger question even than that is who might possibly have those resources.
Yeah.
Because if the struggle is that they don't know how to contact those people, that doesn't matter. You think about that later. Think about the actual solution later. At the moment, all we're trying to do is to identify possible people with solutions, or resources, so because we're in the UK and because it's on TV, we could say, okay, possible resources. Oh, all of the people on Dragon's Den. Right, okay, so those are possibilities. We might go, I can't approach anybody on Dragon's Den. Well, but who says you couldn't? And within that category, personally, I would go, well, the most approachable in Dragon's Den is probably Stephen Bartlett. The next most, do you know what I mean? So we make those judgments straight away. Peter Jones, or he always holds himself off, and he's sort of almost unattainable. But there's people below that you may be able to ask questions of that would cause you to think differently about how you might be able to get hold of resources. And at the end of the day, what are the resources you're after? You're not after 14 million. You're probably after 2,500, whatever. I mean, I just find the whole thing fascinating because it causes you to think differently. And you might not act on those thoughts at all, but you immediately, with a little bit of looking for possible solutions, you go, oh, well, there probably is a way of getting around that. The only unfortunate byproduct, speaking personally, that I've come across is that it sometimes leaves me with a sense of dissatisfaction when I come across a job's worth type of answer, or the computer says no type answer, because I'm going, there's got to be a way. I had a classic today, just as a digression. Next week I'm in New York doing a piece of work. My daughter has a client in New York, and she said to me, this is going back months, well, could I come with you then? And I went, yeah. But my daughter is vegetarian and she's gluten intolerant. So we're flying with Virgin. So I go on my app to try to help her with a meal request. And you get a drop-down list if you want a special meal. One on the drop-down list is gluten intolerant. Another one on the drop-down list is vegetarian. Well, I need both to tick that box. Computer says no, because you've got to choose one or the other.
Oh, no.
So I rang customer services, and the real person that I'm speaking to is completely swallowed up by computer says no, because it immediately saying, well, you can choose this one or you can choose that one. Which one do you want? No, you're not listening to me. She is vegetarian, but she's also gluten intolerant. And the list choices that you're giving me is I need a mixture of two things. And the answer that I got, because the computer says no, because a person was reading from the computer says no, was, but you can't order two meals.
It's like you might as well be speaking to a chatbot, really.
Absolutely. But it's crazy because we're getting, you can immediately get into a straitjacket. And the reason I'm sharing that with you is because that that's an unfortunate byproduct, because you go, there's always a way. You don't say there's not a way. That's not possibility thinking. Whereas some people would just accept that and go, okay then. But I'm left with a legacy of, no, I'm not just going to accept it.
Quite right, too. I think it's a great probably closing statement for this, is that there's always a way. It's just about having the thinking and using those resources that we have to work out what it is.
Yes, or even resources that we don't have, thinking about how we get access to those, because they're seemingly out of our reach at the moment.
Absolutely. Rob, thank you for that. It's been absolutely fascinating, and we really appreciate you giving up an hour or so of your time to come and share that with us.
My pleasure.
I feel quite motivated actually after that.
Oh, so, great! Good.
Yeah, this has been quite therapeutic. Thank you.
Well, I've enjoyed it, so thank you for the invitation.
Wonderful. We will let you go, Rob. Thanks again.
Okay.
Lovely to see you.
And you.
Stay well. Continue to enjoy retirement, and hopefully we will speak again soon. Well, that was all good, interesting stuff. Thoroughly enjoyed that.
Yeah, I feel like it's just, it's kind of another method, isn't it, of being able to control your, well, I'm going to be honest, with reference to me, it would be a good method of controlling my temper. Work sometimes, because the computer says no quite a lot where I work. So, but yeah, it made sense.
Well, in terms of another thinking resource, then I recommend Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman's work on our Systems 1, Systems 2 thinking. Really interesting stuff, which I have a feeling was another thing Rob put me onto back in the day. Well, we must wrap up for this episode. As always, if you've enjoyed listening, please comment, please like, share, subscribe. Go and tell a stranger or people you know. That's probably easier, actually. Tell everyone. Think about what Rob just said. Get your solution-focused thinking hats on. Go out there and find lots of people you can recommend us to. We've had a few shows now where we focus on specific things. We've done Madden of Hope, we've done our Cattle special, and today with Rob. Next week, we're going to delve back into finding some lovely good news to share with you all. So that's something for you to look forward to. That's it for now. So I'll just wrap up by reminding you that no matter how you're feeling right here, right now, everything's fine, probably.